Verstappen caught and passed Lewis Hamilton to clinch Red Bull's first Constructors title since 2013. On the same weekend, Red Bull owner Dietrich Mateschitz passed away. Coming up today on the Grand Prix-Cap, another Verstappen win, but he thoroughly earned it. F1 misses a feel-good moment with Hamilton and Mercedes winning. Was George Russell really deserving of a 5-second time penalty for hitting Carlos Sainz? We have the driver and race ratings, so it's mics on, and away we go. Well, welcome back to the show, everybody. This is actually the second attempt at recording this as I reopen the script, because I've got in from work, sat down, recorded 25 minutes of podcast, completed the show, gone to edit it, and there's no sound. So it wouldn't make a very good audio podcast, would it? So let's kick things off actually with Max Verstappen and another victory for the Dutchman. His 13th win of 2022, but he really did have to fight for this one. Although we'd have been forgiven for thinking that it was a foregone conclusion when the Dutchman eased into the lead at turn 1, having beaten Carlos Sainz off the line, even though Lewis Hamilton was in second place. And we know just what Lewis is capable of. That safety car period, that double safety car period in the middle of the race, really aided Hamilton and Mercedes in being able to put the pressure on Red Bull, because it stopped Verstappen pulling out a lead in that middle phase. I think all things normal, he probably would have just cantered off into the distance and not really been seen very often. But that fumbled pit stop, a rare error from Red Bull, really put Max's back against the wall. I didn't enjoy his sarcastic response over the radio to his team, and I totally get that these drivers are a certain breed of personality. They have to be to get to the top level of any sport, any sportsman, not just motorsport. But we saw it as well in Singapore when he was told to box. The ranting and raving over the radio reached a point there which I just found really distasteful and a bit disrespectful, actually. The swearing and the sarcasm. This team have been brilliant all season. And yeah, he's competitive, he wants to win. But I just don't think, considering the title is wrapped up, I don't think that was necessary. But I totally understand that you're in a high pressure situation and you're probably going to be a bit annoyed that it's gone wrong. And it looked like he was going to be losing his cool and losing 2 places in the race, because he came out behind Charles Leclerc. And that was a really good fight, actually. We saw Max have to work a bit for it. I mean, we all know that Max Verstappen is an excellent overtaker and a fabulous racing driver, but we haven't seen him have to do it too often, especially in the second half of 2022. And he put some manners on Charles, actually, with the move that actually sealed the position for him. But it was a really good battle. Kind of a snapshot of the season, because Leclerc started a little bit ahead, as he did in Bahrain this year, and it was a really close fight for a few laps, and then Verstappen got in front, and the Ferrari's pace just couldn't keep up, unfortunately, for that battle, which would have been really fun to see them racing each other, but catching Lewis Hamilton, who was in the lead. But again, this is an example of Max's maturity, because he could have allowed his cool to slip and it could have ruined his race. He might have got a bit too aggressive with Charles and it might have all got away from him. But he's showing that with age comes a little bit more maturity. And, we're just seeing that again. We're seeing a driver completely at one with the car and comfortable within his own skin. Hamilton made it as tricky as he could when the move came. He said he couldn't really see how close Verstappen was because of the vibrations and the wing mirrors just flapping up and down, basically. But it was a really, really good move from Max. Avoided the contact and took the lead. Verstappen hasn't had many significant hurdles in 2022, but he dealt with this one pretty well. Definitely helps that the title has already been sewn up. And of course, it came on a really poignant weekend for Red Bull, because it was announced on Saturday that Dietrich Mateschitz, the co-owner, co-partner of Red Bull, had passed away. And we must give thanks to his efforts across almost 30 years in motorsport, in Formula One at least, because he started sponsoring Sauber in the 90s, then in 2004 bought Jaguar, which has become Red Bull Racing, and they've won championships. He's given many drivers, not just drivers who've driven for Red Bull a chance in Formula One. So there was Enrique Bernaldi, there was other drivers, Christian Klein, who had actually driven for Sauber and then Red Bull, Antonio Liuzzi. Lots and lots of drivers have had an opportunity because of Dietrich Mateschitz. And it's not just limited to Formula One. There's a whole host of other motorsport or air sport, I suppose it is, where the flying acrobatic pilots are competing. He's done so much, and we should be thankful. And I offer my condolences to the Mateschitz family at this difficult time, and of course to the Red Bull employees, both of the team and worldwide. Now, Max winning again did deny us a feel-good moment, which would have come from Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. And it seems like an odd thing to say about Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, that they're going to deliver the feel-good moment after 8 years of near-total domination. And, they have been all-conquering for nearly a decade. And it would have been a real jolt for F1, I think, because the sport needs that variety. And, of course, we've seen Lewis and Mercedes dominate for some years, but that was interspersed with, first of all, the Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry. And if you have two drivers in the same team really butting heads, that's pretty enjoyable to watch. If we'd had Perez and Verstappen kind of going at it this year, I think we'd have had a much more interesting season because they've both got the same machine. And then, of course, there was a couple of years where Ferrari were stronger, of course falling away, but they had that challenge at Mercedes. They had to overcome it. In 2018, Ferrari, remember, had the fastest car, and they still didn't win the championship like this year. And then eventually Red Bull closed in enough and took the title from Lewis Hamilton last year. And of course, Mercedes have got it completely wrong with the W13. That car has been an anchor around Lewis and George's hopes of winning races and the World Championship. It's been difficult, but Lewis has been professional in the way he's gone about developing that car, taking the hit himself in terms of his championship position and allowing George to go and express himself. And of course, you have to factor in that Lewis and Mercedes are trying to get over still the loss of Abu Dhabi. I don't think that wound will ever fully heal, but obviously the cost cap penalty for Red Bull has reopened that old wound. It's kind of bleeding afresh a little bit for Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes fans and Lewis Hamilton fans and some F1 fans in general. Of course, it was not good. Let's just leave it at that. So there's a whole lot of things going on here. And you can, of course, make a very good case for any other driver and team combination creating a feel-good moment. So, for instance, a Sebastian Vettel podium at the end of the season would be brilliant. It would round his career off beautifully. When Lando Norris gets his first win, it will be a fantastic moment for Formula One. Or maybe even a third World Championship for Fernando Alonso. That would be pretty cool, especially if he achieved it with Aston Martin. That would be quite something. But I think because of the whole Abu Dhabi situation, which I said probably will never fully heal, there's just that little extra flavour to the Lewis and Mercedes story. And Mercedes did everything they could. They brought some updates. The car was good. Lewis was driving at a track he is excellent at. He was driving beautifully. The team put themselves in a position to drive the strategy once everything had played out, and being in the position to pounce on a Red Bull mistake. It's so nearly paid off. They almost did it, but they just don't have the performance, especially on the straights, to deal with Red Bull. That RB18 is just a monster on the straights. When Verstappen finally got past into the lead again, he came from about a second back at the start of the straight, which just tells you that the Mercedes power unit, okay, it's not as good as it used to. It's not as bad as people think it is. They were saying about the E10 fuel not burning in the right way to give the horsepower, but the car is also really draggy. I mean, it might seem counterintuitive. If you stick some side pods on it, it might be less draggy, but it would keep the airflow attached and allow it to flow smoothly. So, there's a whole load of things going against Lewis and Mercedes in that situation, but they were so close, and agonisingly they missed out. Still a second place, an excellent result in terms of what the situation has been for Mercedes this year. But hopefully, really hopefully, this is a taste of what is to come with the Mercedes W14 in 2023. So quickly, before I dive into the driver ratings and the race ratings, did George Russell deserve a penalty for his Turn 1 collision with Carlos Sainz? Probably it was about fair, because even though I can see exactly why the stewards have given it, he's taken Carlos Sainz out of the race, essentially. But I think you have to be... It's not quite as cut and dried as that, I think, because Carlos gets checked up behind Max, who kind of unwittingly triggers the whole thing because he's blocked Sainz, and Sainz then pulls to the left to try and get the drive down towards turn 2 and sort of retake that lead. And George is locked up. They've just met in the middle. It's a turn 1 incident. That happens a lot. Well, I say a lot. It happens fairly often. Let's just put it that way. You know, it's just one of those things. It's not a racing incident. The lap 1, turn 1 is unique because you've got 20 cars all piling towards the same corner at the same time. So it's not, you can't say it's a racing incident, because at that point you're living on your wits. You're just trying to avoid damage and contact and trying to position yourself for a good exit and pounce on any other mistakes. There's a lot going on and it's all happening very quickly. So, and because obviously they're fat with fuel, you see a lot of drivers lock up. I think 5 seconds was about fair, 60-40 fair. I don't think it would have been too dissatisfying if George had been, you know, let off essentially by, they say, no investigation. It was a turn 1 incident. It happens. I think people would have been understanding of that. But of course, Carlos Sainz has ended up out of the race. So it's still not good for Carlos, 5 seconds or not 5 seconds, because his race is ruined. It's too late by that point, but still. So I think just about right there for 5 seconds. So let's move on to the driver ratings. There's a battle a little bit lower down the Constructors' Championship order that I really want to focus on a little bit. So I'm going to whiz through the top half of the grid pretty quickly. So Max Verstappen started second, finished first, rating 4. Excellent drive. Already touched on that. Brilliant from the world champion. And Sergio Perez drove most of the race with half a front wing missing, essentially. Should have been given the black and orange flag as he came from 9th to 4th. But I rate him as a 3 anyway, because driving with half a front wing can't be that easy. Charles Leclerc started 12th from a grid penalty, as did Sergio Perez, of course. Finished 3rd, rating of a 3. Disappointed that he didn't go with Verstappen and challenge Lewis Hamilton. But again, as I said, it's a snapshot of the season. Lewis Hamilton started 3rd after being promoted from grid penalties. Finished 2nd, so close to that victory. It would have been fantastic to see him pull it off. A rating of 4.5. I would have given him 5 if he'd won the race, but he just missed out. George Russell started 4th, finished 5th, rating of 2.5. Drove well, but going to take half a point for that collision with Sainz. Lando Norris pulled off some excellent overtakes in the latter stages of the race as he finished where he started in 6th. Rate him as a 4. That was excellent from Lando. The boy is just brilliant. I mean, if you put him in the Red Bull, there's been rumours, he said about having talks with Red Bull. Max definitely wouldn't have had it quite as easy this year if Lando was in the car. I'd tell you that now. Because he'd have been every bit as quick. He'd have won races. We'd probably have that Hamilton-Rosberg vibe in terms of a competitive inter-team battle if Lando had been there. That's my thoughts on it, at least. But from one potential future Red Bull driver to a former Red Bull driver, and potentially a Red Bull driver again in Daniel Ricciardo, started and finished 16th. It was a nightmare weekend for Danny Ric. He's just broken mentally, isn't he? He really needs to get away and just reset and hopefully come back in 2024 and be strong. I rate him as a 1 because it was just so bad. I just feel so sorry for him, unfortunately. It was not a weekend to remember. Esteban Ocon started from the pit lane for Alpine, having been knocked out in Q1. Finished 10th. I rate him as a 2 because he really should have got out of Q1. But recovered to kind of where he should have been anyway. Fernando Alonso had a few adventures on his way to finishing 15th in the classification from 14th on the grid. I rate him as a 2.5 because he was driving pretty well, and then obviously had the crash with Stroll. I think he has to take some of the blame because I think he used too much of the slipstream to try and get past Stroll. But obviously you want to maximise it, but by that point he'd left Stroll no way of defending, which was probably his aim. But you've got to expect that the driver in front is going to defend. So the Alpine's pretty quick in a straight line, so he probably would have been able to outbrake Lance anyway. So I think he has to take 5% of the blame because the way he closed up on the Aston Martin. But of course, Stroll mostly to blame on that incident. And Fernando was given a 30-second time penalty, which is ridiculous because, look, the FIA need to tighten up this whole flags and penalties system. It really does need to be more consistent because we've had Kevin Magnussen get 4 meatball flags this season. Fernando Alonso not given one for driving without a wing mirror. Sergio Perez not given one for driving with a bit of his front wing damaged in the same way that Magnussen has been guilty of or been called in for this season. And neither of them were given a black and orange flag at any point in the race, despite pieces missing from their car. Alonso was given 30 seconds on appeal from Haas. Sergio Perez was also appealed by Haas, or protested even. And something has to change. The FIA really, 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 really needs to get its house in order. Alfa Romeo went pointless again. I've given both of their drivers a 2. Bottas failing to finish from 7th on the grid. Zhou coming from 19th to 11th. Aston Martin, Sebastian Vettel finished 7th from 10th on the grid. I rate Seb as a 5. He was excellent. And it was really, really good to see him putting in those moves and really seeming to enjoy his final race in America. Lance Stroll started an incredible 5th, a great qualifying session for the Canadian, but it ended in a bit of a disaster with his collision with Fernando Alonso. I rate him as a 1.5, and now we reach the battle that I really wanted to talk about. It's Haas versus AlphaTauri. Heading into the weekend, they were locked on 34 points each. Kevin Magnussen's P6 in Austria, keeping the American team ahead. And of course, they finished, let's run through where they all finished. So K-Mag started 15th, finished 8th. I rate him as a 3. Mick Schumacher, 18th to 14th, rate him a 2. Gasly, 11th to 13th, rate him 2. Also, penalty for dropping too far behind the safety car, which everybody is guilty of. I don't understand. Again, another reason why the FIA needs to sort this out. It's just getting a bit ridiculous, to be honest. The amount of cameras they have, they can police these things very, very easily. And Yuki Tsunoda, 13th to 9th, rate him as a 2.5. This is a really important battle because Haas, of course, are coming off the back of finishing bottom in 2021, and AlphaTauri finished 6th, and at times were 3rd or 4th fastest car in 2021. And they're, Haas, they're like, yes, we are flying. AlphaTauri are like, ugh, this is a disaster, this is terrible. But K-Mag's 8th place, and the protest was brilliant from Haas. Not really because it got Alonso a penalty, but because it got them 2 points, 2 extra points for 8th place instead of 2 points just for 9th. So they ended up with 4, and they've actually doubled their lead now over AlphaTauri. So they are clear 8th with the count back as well. AlphaTauri don't really score a huge amount of points. They're a bit fortunate to get 9th place or 10th place on the road with Tsunoda. So it's really hotting up between those two. And AlphaTauri don't want to finish 9th. This is a team that was on the up over the last few years and been producing some excellent drivers. But it all seems to be stumbling a little bit. They've got Nick De Vries in the car next year to replace Pierre Gasly. And we haven't seen a driver come through the Red Bull Academy for a couple of years now. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda's come in 2021, but he's been a bit, rough diamond. He really does need some smoothing out. He's got some big jagged edges. So they're not willing to put anyone else in there yet. But they've gambled on Nick De Vries after his excellent run in Italy. Maybe he's the guy to turn the fortunes around AlphaTauri. And let's round this off with Williams. Alex Albon started 8th and finished 12th, rating him 2. Nicholas Latifi went from 20th to 17th, rating him as a 2. Okay, so before I round things off, the race rating, it was a thoroughly exciting race. I mean, I say exciting, looking back on it now, it was exciting, but at the time I was, dreading what was about to happen, fearing the worst. It was almost like waiting for a shark to eat me in the waters because Max Verstappen was closing in on Hamilton. And I knew as soon as the Red Bull driver got DRS, it was game over. Yes, of course, I am a Lewis Hamilton fan, but as you've seen, I have praised Max Verstappen because you can't not praise him. He's excellent. He drove fantastically, very, very deserving of the win in a race that, he could have easily lost because of the double safety car period in the mid-part. And we kind of needed this race, actually, because we've had the same winner since mid-July. Verstappen has won, since the Austrian Grand Prix, he's won all bar one. And that other one was won by Perez. So Red Bull are on an absolute roll. They've won 8 in a row, but this one was fraught with peril. So yes, we had the same result, but the route there was much more enjoyable. And that's all we ever want. You want to see a challenge. You want to see competition. And it definitely helped having Mercedes and Hamilton in the mix, because they're just a bit more on the ball against Red Bull than Ferrari have been in 2022. So overall, I give this race an 8 out of 10. As always, I put the question of rating the race to the peeps at the Grid Talk podcast. Go and find them in the show notes or the description down below. So here are their ratings. So Grid Talk host George Howson gave it a 7. Jawad Yacoub of Hit the Apex podcast gave it a 7 as well. I apologise if you can hear that outside. Hopefully it's not coming through too much. Jared Partridge gave it a 7 as well, as did Philip Matthew from the Grip Strip pod. And the race got an 8 from Grid Talk hosts Ruby Price and Owen Medford, as well as Everything F1's Tom Downey and Jamie Cooper. So thank you to those guys for sending me their race ratings. And I won't try and shout over this noise too much longer, as the checkered flag is waving on another show. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. You can find more of my written work at f1chronicle.com and insideof2.com, as well as more on this channel, such as short videos reacting to breaking news or just general opinion. I'm doing an F1 manager challenge with Ferrari. I'm in the process of putting that together. Keep your eyes peeled for that. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when that goes up. And also when I go live to stream my Alpine Juniors only save on F1 Manager. You can go back and watch the full stream from last weekend. It's there on YouTube. If you like what I do, please leave a review. And if I rock the mic, leave a like as well. I'll be back next week for the Mexican Grand Prix-Cap. Until then, enjoy the racing, and I'll see you when the 5 red lights go out.